This feels like a pretty appropriate follow-up to a video I made over on the main channel about League's tutorials and stuff, so I'm gonna talk about this really quickly. So League of Legends added WSD key movement to the PBE a few days ago, that being their testing server, and it is going about as well as expected for a few reasons. There's a good chunk of people absolutely losing their mind, which is exactly what you'd think would happen, but I have to be honest, I am on the side of it being a tinge of an overreaction. To briefly fill you in, League has put together a team called Poro that stands for something I can't remember that's all about getting new players into League of Legends. I'm all for this, as someone who once again made a 40-minute video causing a massive stink up about this not too long ago, and I will leave a link to that below. I maintain the tutorials are the biggest issue, but either way, introducing an alternate WASD community control scheme, whatever, is their first big push, and I don't think it's a bad idea at all. Playing games with WSD is much more intuitive and common than the kind of control scheme League has, so it should act as a better tool for onboarding. It also, in theory, and this is what we'll get into, should have the trade-off of losing some precision so you aren't just getting buffed, losing some accuracy in your movement and stuff like that. Which in many ways it seems to have done, especially when it comes to the jungle with its awkward pathways and melee characters who can struggle with attack ranges and stuff. Where this is falling apart a little bit is with high attack speed carry champs, so your bot laners basically. There's a lot of clips circulating because at these higher attack speed caps, you can sort of just never stop attacking as you chase and kite. As it is now, this is a problem, 100%, there's no way around that, but that's where I'm coming in and saying people are going a bit overboard because that's as it is now. People are already using this to say League is finished, acting like it's close to cheating, the game is playing itself, etc. You've all heard this before, but WASD is staying on PBE for multiple patches for this exact reason. It's a complicated system that the game wasn't built for, so naturally there are going to be unintended side effects. There was another one where Nunu was 180 snowballing, there was no turning circle, just locking into directions. It's terrifying, absolutely nonsensical, and obviously not sticking around. Finding stuff like the ADC's ability to just run you down and Nunu's ability to 380 no-scope you is what the PBE is for, and this exact possibility was even mentioned in a post with potential solutions, so there's a good chance this doesn't even survive the next PBE patch, never mind live servers. Now, if it does go live, that is on Riot, no way around it, so it's good to make a stink about it now so they absolutely know for sure that it is a problem. My issue is, why is it that every time an innovation is made to help out new players, people act like it's going to end a game? Any game. This happens everywhere and it drives me fucking crazy. I agree that to some extent some of these changes coming alongside the WSD movement could be considered a bit much. I had mention of some sort of enemy flash timer where you do the thing where you ping someone's flash and it just gives you a timer for everyone that used flash in the fight. I have not seen that written down, so I don't know, but if that is true then that's maybe a bit much, but you can get that sort of stuff through third-party software if you want it that badly anyway, so I don't know. But these arguments that having stuff like WSD movement will turn new players into pros who can just dodge everything is fundamentally flawed. Just because you have the possibility of dodging skill shots at a moment's notice doesn't mean you can or will be capable of it, and it certainly won't make up for the lack of game knowledge which always goes underappreciated in conversations like this one. And I do mean always, because it hasn't even been that long since I've seen this exact conversation play out before. The exact same thing happened and is still happening with Street Fighter 6, and that's the comparison I really wanted to talk about today. With the release of SF6, they added an alternative control scheme called Modern Controls. It turned what is usually a 6-button fighting game with motion inputs for special moves into a 3-button game with a dedicated special move button. This also included an assist button that would let you do auto combos, so a combo done by just repeatedly pressing the same button. Over the last few years, I've seen the same talking points that are currently being used towards WASD movement in League being used against Modern Controls in Street Fighter 6. The big points of contest here, instead of ADCs gliding around, are auto combos and 1-button special moves, which are just controversial topics in the FGC community at large. There's a constant sentiment that people think you're going to get good without even trying, especially when it comes to 1-button DPs, which are typically invincible anti-air moves. Usually these use a sort of Z motion, and in the heat of a moment can be missed pretty easily. It's a real skill that you have to develop, but with Modern you just press the button. Somewhat similar to how you might knee-jerk react with a flash to an ability flying at you that you didn't see coming, it can almost feel cheap. I'm not saying Flash is cheap, but I mean, it's kind of cheap, but I'm just saying the reaction is kind of similar, and it can feel cheap compared to having to do the motion and stuff. There is also a legitimate argument that some skill expression has been lost over the years, but believe it or not, these are not the same thing. If this was a bigger video, I might dig more into that, but making adjustments for new players and losing skill expression are not conjoined at the hip. Street Fighter V is a perfect example where they tried to scale back skill expression for new players and it completely backfired. These systems just come with strengths and weaknesses. See, this new control scheme, you don't have all of your moves. There simply isn't enough button space. You're often locked out of optimal combos, and as a balancing measure, you do less damage with auto combos. And of course, the ultimate kicker is that despite these strengths that are apparently so broken, a large portion of the player base and a majority of professional players still use classic controls. I don't know if League is considering damage tweaks, but they definitely have mentioned screwing around with your auto attack timings, so the same thought process is there. They talked about stuff like implementing some kind of delay if you're just doing this whole gliding technique sort of thing. Modern controls in Street Fighter 6 are good for some things and bad for others, and given time, this is how I expect WSD movement to go for League. Most people seem to agree that the major issue is the ADC thing, they're just really hyper-focused on it, but many of them are also saying it's not that good for lane because no one's moving fast enough to warrant it, so the loss of precision in your movement isn't worth it, giving rise to this idea that people might change control schemes halfway through the game. Personally, I am not so convinced this is going to happen because, again, I don't think this ability for ADCs to just wee around is sticking around, but that's for time to tell. Even if it does, it will just be something that people get used to after a couple of weeks or months, and it will just become another way in which League of Legends has changed, which it was always bound to, unless you think you're playing the same game that released in 2009. This is always what happens. People overreact to these pretty substantial changes, admittedly, and then after a couple months, it's just part of the game. People might complain about it, but it is just part of the game. I get that it's a spooky concept, especially when we don't know exactly what kind of impact it's going to have, but Street Fighter 6 has been an undeniable success, and a big part of that is the new changes made to appeal to newer players. I personally think the league would only benefit by having more new players. Only time will tell how that will go, but I think if we give them enough time to get this feature right, it could be a really big boon for League of Legends on the whole. Doesn't mean it won't have issues, but everything does. Literally every part of League has some sort of problem. Either way, I still think the tutorials are the bigger issue, and until you fix those, I don't know how much of a difference all of this can make. So, whatever. If you want to know my thoughts on that, go check out the full video. Leave a comment if you'd like more content like this, and I will see you in the next one.